everybody. I'd love to welcome you to the meeting tonight. It's great to see everybody here and lots of familiar faces. I feel like I'm getting to know more people. I'd like to give you a little update on our 2011 activities. In July, we were awarded a $700 mini grant from the Wisconsin Historical Society for the purpose of purchasing software that'll help keep track of our donations and holdings, as well as membership and other activities. We also received a donation from the Corden Family Foundation, which will be used to purchase technology for our organization. The town of Bailey's Harbor has very generously and with great speed provided a headquarters office for us on the lower level of the town hall here. This needs to be furnished, of course, but even in its nascent state, it provides great storage space and it'll provide some meeting space too. The display cases next to the library will soon be sporting new signage. One of the signs is on our display table over right above there on the ledge. Identifying the Historical Society as the producer of the display cases. Our fall newsletter will be coming out soon, and we plan to recognize all of the donations we've received from members and supporters, both in terms of time spent and in actual substantive items that we've received. You might have noticed when you came in, we have our historic Bailey's Harbor trays for sale at the back of the auditorium, which show 4 pictures from the early days of the town. And a little sheet of paper goes with them that kind of describes exactly what they are if you haven't been around Bailey's Harbor long enough to necessarily recognize them. The price for those is $22. And additionally, there are DVDs of all our events from 2010 and 2011. If you're interested in any of these, we have some stock here that you can just like buy one outright if you want to. If there's something that isn't there that you want, we'll be glad to get it for you and send it to you. We have little mailers that you can pre-address and grab a DVD brochure, circle the one you want, and then put your payment in, and we'll get it back to you as soon as possible. The price of the DVDs is $15, and if they need to be mailed, it's $16, which I think is quite a deal. Now, you know, all nonprofits are always interested in fundraising, and so after my remarks, we'll be passing a hat amongst you, so you can think if you can possibly squeeze out a few shekels to give us your support. We'd really appreciate that. Now we have to do a little business, and that is in the September meeting every year, we have to elect the board of directors for the following year. Last month, individuals were nominated: Suzanne Baldry, Roy Cole, Leanne Despodes, Steve Hay, Lynn Mackey, Mary Moran, and Kristen Pyle. This is the election meeting for those positions. The terms will begin January 1st, 2012. We'll have a voice vote. All members here who are in favor of electing the slate of nominees, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, that's carried, and that will be our board of directors. Should the board stand or at least make themselves known? I think so. This is Kristen, Suzanne, Roy, Mary is back there. Lynn is next to her. I'm Leanne, I'm right here. And did I get everybody? I think I did. I got Susie, she's right there. Yeah. Okay, thanks very much. That was pretty quick. Now, just in case any of you are here thinking that this is going to be a program on oral histories, which was the original plan, but the gentleman who was going to present it injured himself and found that he couldn't be up in the county this summer. We had to change at the beginning of summer, and we've changed over to this program on resorts. Susie and Kristen were super enthused about it. And Kristen has amassed sort of a neat collection of vintage resort memorabilia, which helped a lot, I think, together with our other holdings. And so they're going to be leading the program tonight. We hope that this is going to be very interactive. If any of you were at the postcard meeting last year, that's sort of how we're picturing this to be. So if anybody wishes to speak, and this is real important because we're going to have 2 hand mics that'll be passed around, which means that our usual system that picks up voices, in the audience for the taping, but we can't always hear it. So if you were going to speak, please make sure you get a microphone. And
I think Lynn is, we're going to have people. And
okay.
not
Okay.
to be forgotten over there.
Okay.
So if you can raise your hand or whatever, we'll be right there on the mic.
And if you could identify yourself, that would be great because, it's all for the historical record. Oh, and the last thing, must always ask you, at the end of the meeting, if you're able to, would you please hang up your chair and save a little wear and tear on the board here? We would appreciate that very much. Okay, so this is Susie Baldry is going to speak to you for a few minutes. And then on with the show.
Well, thank you all for coming once again. It's always fun putting these together, but it's a lot of work. And as a group, we've decided that what we'd like to do is develop a volunteer sheet. Now, this is not going to mean you're going to commit yourself for life or anything, but it's little things like setting up chairs, making goodies. We created a scarecrow out here. Next year, we want to do a 4th of July parade. So we're going to get a sheet developed and turn it over to you and ask if you'd like to volunteer for 1 hour or something of that sort. So that's coming up. Also, I want to share with you, Egg Harbor, their first year, and they have 2 books that they wrote. It's stories from individual families from Egg Harbor. Now, none of them are chronological or they're no great big long thing. They're little stories of the people, and it didn't have to be somebody that was born 200 years ago or something of that sort, but little vignettes of what life was like. And as it happens, my husband came from Egg Harbor, and as I was going through this book, I found a little story that my brother-in-law had written. We would love anybody who has a story about Bailey's Harbor, who has a family member or grandparents, write it down. As we all know, those people who were back there in those days are no longer here, and we are now that generation. It doesn't have to be a book. It can be as simple as a funny story. And I just wanted to share this with you. My husband came from a family of 13. My parents and their siblings lived through the Great Depression, didn't have electricity, running water, or a phone. We had an outdoor toilet, which brings to mind a bad experience that I had with that toilet. Usually, older siblings would always tease the younger members about one thing or another, and often it was about the rats out in the toilet. They would always say, "Watch out for the rats. The rats will get you." Well, I was about 5 years old, and it was winter. Went out to the toilet, and on the way in, I realized there was something in my pants legs, and I grabbed hold of it. I thought, oh my God, it's a rat. And I ran into the house screaming, "There's a rat in my pants, there's a rat in my pants." My brothers and my mother and my brothers tried to calm me down to find out what was the matter. And I managed to get out, "There's a rat in my pants." My brothers grabbed it, held on to it, and said, we've got it. He can't bite you." My mother ran, got a pair of scissors, cut off my pants leg. Well, it turned out to be one of my mittens. So this is what we're looking for. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but this is fun, this is history, so keep this in mind and share that with us. So we have so many ideas. People are constantly saying to us, "Why don't you do a program on this? Why don't you do a program at that?" And we really are trying to do that, and we will continue to do so. So continue to give us the ideas and be willing to help us develop them. We would also like to do, and I don't know how many photographers we have in the group or just people who'd like to drive around and look. If you look around, we are losing our barns. Little by little, they're all falling down. And they're such an important part of our history, as were the farms. What we'd like to do is get pictures of all of the barns that still exist. So if somebody likes to do pictures, or if somebody likes to ride around, write down where the barns are and tell us, so that we can do that and then eventually develop a program doing that. So with that in mind, let's get going. And we're going to use all of your help, so don't be afraid to jump in and let us know.
Oops. So basically, we started out by using our postcard collection, and from there, we kind of started looking for old brochures. And I don't know if any of you had a chance to look at the table back there, but I found a number of old Key to the Door magazines that I found old ads in. The vertical file at the library here had this wonderful old guide. As I was looking at this, I was wondering, who are these women on the cover water skiing? So I asked my dad, because I figured he might have known some young girls back then. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this was from the Bailey's Harbor Centennial. And they had the Tommy Bartlett Show come up and do a show. So these are some babes from the Tommy Bartlett Show. If anybody has anything to add to that, I'd love to hear it.
The one year that they did have them, it was so cold in Bailey's Harbor that it actually snowed on the 4th of July, and they canceled the Tommy Bartlett Show that particular 4th of July, only in Bailey's Harbor in Door County. It's kind of interesting to see all the different resorts that were here and to see some of those that still exist. Go ahead.
So this was the inside of the ad. And once again, I'm a pictures person, so I'm thinking, who are the people on the horse? Did a little research. Leanne told me that the young woman on the white horse is probably Mary Alice Brand, Gordy Brand, and then our very famous Verlin Keno is the little guy. So I hot-tailed it right across the street over to Verlin's to see if that was him, and yes, he did admit to being the little guy on the horse. You can see the old theater in the background.
And the guy at the top with the white, the fish boil on the right-hand side is a Hunold. I think it's George Hunold.
Yep.
Is that, anybody agree?
Yeah, that's George, yep.
Okay.
So we thought we'd try to start with some of the older hotels. And this is the Scenic Grove. It was owned by the Anklem family. And it was located where
Where the Emmanuel Lutheran Church is now. And you can see the steeple from Emmanuel that existed, that was the first church. This is the inside with, that would be Elsie Anklem, 1914 to 1958. Look at those great chairs. These are some of her cottages that were up on the top, which still exist. Which one burned down, Christy?
I think.
The lower right, isn't it? The lower
Arborvitae.
right is the one that burned down.
That one?
Yep, that one.
Okay.
And I thought it'd be interesting to have some now pictures, so maybe there's an owner here.
Yeah, is there an owner of that house here? They haven't. Oh. What is the name?
I don't know. So here's the butternut. Here it is today. Now, I added some buildings that I thought were probably part of the original complex, and I'm hoping somebody here can tell me yay or nay. This is another building just down from just what would be north of the butternut. Does anybody know, was this part of the Scenic Grove?
It was Ankles, Elmer Ankles lived there.
Elmer Anklem?
Elmer Anklem lived there? Okay.
And then this building is just north of the white one.
That's where Elmer moved after he moved from the other one, because my dad did some work.
Honey, get the,
And that one?
Now, Elmer was a brother to Elsie, right? Okay.
So now here we are down in Frogtown, and this is the Lakeside Lodge, which obviously is gone now. But in doing some research, I found that Frogtown previously was called Old Muckian Road. Does that sound familiar to anyone?
That's what Chapel Lane is now.
This is, Frogtown leads you to Chapel Lane.
This is that Frogtown.
Well, I'll show you another picture. And this would be looking south, and I believe you can see where Chapel Lane then starts. Go up there.
Here?
Yeah. You go up around the corner, and then those
Oh, I
cottages.
see, and then that goes up, and then that way would be Chapel Lane.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, where did that place sit, Christie? Where was that? Whose house is there now? Where that lodge was? Does anybody know?
It's a big house.
I believe so.
Is that
The
Sonalex?
big brand-new house? That sits right in front of the old...
No. Dr. Philbuck's, it used to be Dr. Philbuck's house.
Okay.
No, Dr. Philbuck was back farther.
Christie, is this where the art colony stayed?
No. Oh, maybe.
No.
No?
The art colony I thought was up on Chapel Lane. No? Okay.
The single fella stayed here.
Who stayed there? Mrs. Williamson?
The single fella stayed there and took their meals there. The married guys had tents.
Okay. Did you all hear that?
No.
Okay, let her repeat this then, okay. Let me get over here.
The single people, the single guys that were at the art colony stayed there, and I think all of them took their meals there probably, but the married couples had tents that came from the hardware store in town.
And do you know exactly what the site is now, where that's at?
I don't.
Thank you.
This is what was called the Globe Hotel, and it sits right downtown. I'll just scoot ahead to, here it is today. Not much has changed in that building.
And a man.
We just thought the fence was kind of an interesting detail. Why only around part of it?
Can you read the sign up there, Christy?
It says the Globe Hotel.
Okay.
Which of those two parts of the building were original? What was the first part?
I couldn't tell you.
You mean they weren't always like that together?
I
One,
suspect not because they're not identical.
oh, interesting.
I've always heard that the hotel had the sort of public area in the middle, and that one side of it was for women, single women, and the other side was for the men. But I haven't really ever seen that picture with the separate fence there, so I don't know. It could have been a put-together building. There's plenty of them in town.
So this is another brochure that Leanne gave us. That was part of the Lenore John collection. And what we thought was so interesting about this is that it was put together by the Women's Community Development Club.
Yeah, you gotta get a little bit too close to the
Okay.
microphone.
So I don't know if anybody knows who these beautiful bathing beauties are. Anybody's mother or father?
Notice the 2-cent stamp? Imagine where that would get you nowadays. These were the automobile routes from Chicago and Green Bay, and it looks like it's right along the, maybe, it looks like Frogtown, but now I don't think it is.
I think it is Frogtown.
That was the original
That was
road?
the original road?
Okay. That hasn't changed a lot.
No.
And they'd pick people up at Sturgeon Bay. They'd come in either by rail or they'd come in by boat. And they would pick people up in Sturgeon Bay and bring them up from Sturgeon Bay with these vehicles, whichever they happen to be.
Overland touring cars
Yeah.
in the flag.
Here's another image of that same vehicle that was part of Lenore John's collection.
Do we know who the people are, Leanne?
Those two boys in the top photo. The two boys in the top photo are two two of my uncles. I'm not sure exactly which two, but I think it might be maybe Lester Brand and Gus Brand. And in the picture before, where the thing was being driven along, the man driving that front vehicle, that front car, that was Harry Brand. He was also an uncle of mine, and he was sheriff for a while, and his daughter and her family live in the Brand house downtown here.
I don't know if anybody noticed, but about 2 weeks ago in town, there was quite a collection of these parked in front of the Yum Yum tree. It's kind of interesting.
Do you notice that the steering wheel's on the right side? Yes. This guy's going the wrong way. That's okay. Go ahead, move on. And this is the Shram, which we did the program on last time. Excuse me. And that's, which one is that? That's Jack Wasserbeck?
No, we didn't know. This was just a picture of the bar.
Okay.
That's,
There's Jack Wasserbeck. And there's Lanny Nelson, Jolene Visti, her dad Les, and Keno, Mr. Keno, what's his first name? Harold Keno. Anybody know who that is back there?
looks familiar.
He looks familiar, but I don't know. It's like a beard. But that was then the Frontier.
What year was that about, do you think?
1976. Yep, because actually my mom took this picture for the.
Really? Annie, you were sitting at that bar, I bet.
Now, can't somebody tell us a good Frontier bar story?
Oh. I think we all sat at that bar at some point.
And here it is today, the Harbor Fish Market. So the next set of cottages we're going to look at is the Harbor View. And this is from a 1954 Chamber of Commerce.
And the phone number is 6R2, line 6 and 2 short rings.
To the best of our research,
Yes.
we've been able to figure out that these cottages were just south of Schmitz Gazebos.
Yes.
Wasn't there an Anderson who had a motel
Anderson's,
also? We're going to, a picture coming up on that.
That would be facing west.
Yes,
All right.
So there's Bailey's Harbor,
on there.
the town proper.
Now,
Did anybody stay in the Robin Hood? The Birches?
Those were all the side of the Bailey's Harbor Yacht Club now, right?
Yes.
Yes. North.
Now, this building is kind of interesting. Here's pictures of it. By the looks of the car, what would you say, the 30s? The 20s? 40s?
30s, I would say 30s.
This building had many lives. Here's a close-up of it. Here's when I lived in it in 1991. And when I lived in it, I found paperwork up there from the Coast Guard. And at this point, the building was facing east. Here it is in its final life. After the old yacht club burned down, the current owners moved it along with another cottage to be their quasi-restaurant, whatever. So it's kind of interesting how this building's kind of been shuffled around on that property.
Does
This
it-
was 1994.
Does it still exist?
I don't think so, no. Now, we thought this might be part of that old complex. Does anybody know?
No, it wasn't.
Vic Martell had
Vic
this house.
Martell owned that, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Now,
they bought it later, after Vic Martell lived there.
At one time, it was part of the Bailey's Harbor Yacht Club
Right.
complex, and it was called Deer Run Lodge or something.
yeah, that's what he called when he built
Okay.
it.
Does anybody know if this was part of the Harbor View complex?
No, it wasn't.
That was always a private cottage? Mm-hmm. Okay. How about this one?
Doc Peterson, he was a chiropractor, retired. Doc Peterson, and he was a retired chiropractor. And I think his relatives are right here in the audience.
Raise your hands, relatives. Right in the back row there. Do you have anything to add to this? Yeah, just wait a minute until you get the microphone, please, okay?
I'm Doc Peterson's niece, and we are living in that cottage right now, in that cabin. And I almost thought I saw that he might have been the person in that bar view in the far back. I don't know, but possibly he might have been. We're trying to figure out, research whether this was part of the lighthouse, the Coast Guard light station, I guess, or the life-saving station. We're trying to research and figure out if that's the case, because there is a big flagpole in front and everything, and we've been looking at, Jeff has been looking at the Holtz photos, trying to, from like 1916, trying to figure out if it's in there, which it kind of looks like it is, but we can't quite figure out for sure. It's probably, the cabin itself is probably from the late 1800s, so, yeah.
Do you have an abstract? Because that would give you a good idea. We don't. That's a shame, because that's such a piece of history. They don't do that anymore, but that's an awesome piece of history.
Right.
Well, and it looks like there's two little cottages in the back.
Well, yeah, there's a garage in the back, and there's a shed. There's a shed on the right side and a garage on the left side in the back. Plus an outhouse in the back, right, behind the shed.
Did
There's an
Tischler Builders have anything to do with this cottage?
Christie, the image right before this one, kind of red, that one, I heard in the.
Wait a minute,
early
Cynthia,
90s
he's getting you
was
the
Fadinia.
microphone. Just hang on a second, please.
I heard that's owned by the Fadinia family, and there were like 4 sisters. I don't know.
Challenger McBride used to live there, and I think her mother owned it.
Yeah, her mother did.
But I know now there are 4 sisters and their families and they come up here regularly during the summer.
Because Challenger used
Believe
to
it or
live there.
not, they will stuff like 24 people into that little place. It's amazing.
Well, I guess you didn't know you were going to be part of the show tonight, so thank you.
Yes.
Well, there are 4 sisters that, you're correct. Yeah. 4
Yeah.
sisters that own that cabin. Right. And it passed down from their mother, who lived in there year-round, probably about the same time as my uncle. So,
It would have been in the 70s, because we had Cub Scouts there, and Challenger was a Cub grandmother or whatever.
And there's a sister called Ginevra. It's 4 Morse girls. Is that what the family?
So this was
I think?
just one more that was out there that obviously was part of some collection at one time.
yeah.
The 2 previous ones, when the yacht club was purchased by its most recent owner, they were not included in it. But this one was, as was that converted Deer Lodge. That's
Well,
now
yeah.
been sold as a single family. I know that to be the case.
Right. This is right next to us, and I actually talked to 2 of the Schmidt sisters one time when I was up here in summer a couple of years ago, and they were saying that their grandfather hand-built this cabin, and then it was moved from the Schmidt's gazebo's site over where the yacht club area is now. So it was moved from that area over to next to us on the other, away from the yacht club, on the other side of us. So, but their grandfather did hand build the cabin, I guess. They were saying that. They were, looking at it and everything, and told me that. So, and it was moved. I'm not sure where it was before, but.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, is this the hotel that Glenn Anderson had? Yes. Okay, and it was adjacent to the Schmitz Gazebo area, and it ran east and west, is that right? That's what we're thinking. Lauren, do you remember that?
Yes, I remember. There was a bucket of hot tar up the ladder, and the handle rolled and fell on the ground, and burned my arm and my side. Doc Philbin.
Yeah.
Look, I guess business was good, so they added on.
Look at those cars. Is that a Nash? And what's that one?
Yeah.
49, isn't it?
All right. What's that one? Looks like an Oldsmobile.
Looks like a Ford, like a 52.
Looks like one of those Neapolitans.
It's a little bit longer, don't you think, though, than Neapolitan, Metropolitan?
Now, these were still standing and were part of the yacht club, Bailey's Harbor Yacht Club complex back in the late 70s, because that's where they used to house the help. They called it the units.
You want to tell us about working at the yacht club? And there's Schmitz Gazebos. That was the yacht club of Northern Door County. That if you went to Schmitz, you were going out to eat, big time. And look at where it says American and European plan. Christy, you checked on that, didn't you?
Well, they were, and maybe Karen Tews is here tonight. She brought all kinds of images from Schmitz Gazebos. She's a family member. Maybe she would like to speak to that.
Where are you, Karen? Okay.
Yeah.
Really have anything to tell.
You know, tell us why you brought who you are, okay?
I'm the great George and Jack Schmitz. Jack was the brother of George, who started the club, the Schmitz Gazebos, I think it was 1936, 35. And my mother was his niece, and my mother and aunt always spent summers up here when they were little, and I heard about how wonderful this place was, and Uncle Jack and Uncle George forever and ever and ever. And that's why I came up to do genealogy, and you know, it really is a pretty good place. So that's how I became associated with and have gathered all the information on.
She brought us a lot of nice information on Schmitz Gazebos, and it's right here on the back table. Thank you, Karen.
As we go through this, you're going to see a lot of stonework. We were always kind of curious to know if anybody has an idea who was, what would have been the mason? Would it have been Mr. Jorns, or was there another mason? And as we go through, just kind of keep an eye and note what we're talking about. Over there is, of course, the view of Bailey's Harbor. Evan Hansen? Okay, thank you.
Karen also brought a really nice aerial photograph where you can see the Coast Guard station where that had stood out there also. So take advantage of looking at the wonderful pictures she brought there in the back. She also put together a really nice historical article for the Peninsula book that the Door County Historical Society puts together, and it's just a great memory of Schmitz Gazebos. And you can get that at the library. I think Tischler Builders has a history out here. From what I've read, they built a number of the cottages. William Tischler, who was the owner of my house. And as we go along, in doing research, I found that name kept popping up at a number of cottage complex up here. So this is what you came to Door County to stay in, isn't it?
I would be curious to know what kind of a light that was. Looks like it's a real nice antique. And the wicker?
But it's got electric.
Yeah.
Yes, up there too.
There was entertainment there. There was weekend entertainment, and Mr. Peterson, who lived south of on Ridges Road, played the piano on the weekends in the late 60s, before Burt Wild got involved.
Look at,
Oops, sorry.
okay. Look at those chairs. Isn't that Art Deco with the work done? Wow. See, again, we see all that stonework. It's so beautiful. Does it still exist over there, Cynthia? Do you know? No.
No way.
You wish it did.
I think in doing research, and I think I read this in Karen's article, that the Brungravers built this series of cottages. I don't know.
Brun Grabers? He was a Jacksonport builder, wasn't he?
I believe so. And I think this is probably the last of the cottages to have just recently been torn down. So they lasted a long time. I will be the first to be brave enough to tell a housekeeping story. When I was 16, there was 4 16-year-olds who were the housekeepers at the Bailey's Harbor Yacht Club. And we would have to be there at 7 in the morning to clean the lobby and the bar. And then there'd always be this lag time of a couple hours. So we'd usually be done cleaning the lobby by maybe 9 o'clock, but nobody would really be moving till 10 or 11. So we'd just go over to one of the cottages and watch Love Boat or, and you know, sometimes a pie from the kitchen might come along with us. And, you know, if we were really feeling rambunctious, we'd jump on the beds, and it was just like, never hire 4 16-year-olds to take care of your place because it's just really not a good idea.
And then there's the incident of losing the vacuum cleaner in the woods, and nobody realized it was missing for like a week.
We used to have a golf cart that we used to get from cottage to cottage because it's a sprawling complex out there, and the golf cart had a house on the back that you put all your sheets and cleaning stuff in, and we'd put the vacuum cleaner on top of the house. Well, there was a very old man who worked out there who was the maintenance man, and one morning, after we got done cleaning the lobby and the bar, he came knocking on the little shed that we had all our stuff in, and he said, "Girls, did you lose anything yesterday?" And we're like, "Nah, I don't know, what?" He walks away, and he comes back in with the vacuum cleaner. He said, "I found this over at Deer Run Lodge in the woods." I guess we maybe took the corner a little too fast, and we lost the vacuum. I mean, I don't know, things happen.
16.
So anyway,
Christy
feel free to share your stories.
Christy,
like
was that
Please,
Butch
'cause
Putza that worked there? As maintenance man? Was his Butch Putza?
Kenny.
I couldn't tell
Because
you.
he worked
was
for
just-
years out
He was
there.
a real older man. It wasn't Kenny Johnson.
No, it was Butch.
Okay. He was real short,
That's right, it was.
very soft-spoken.
Yep, that was Butch.
I think it's the only time he talked to us all summer. I think he was afraid of us. We were hell on wheels on that golf cart. So this is a now picture of,
Irene's house. That's where Irene lived.
and this is another mystery cottage that we're hoping someone can tell us, you know, where it started its life. It sits now directly by, what would be east of the previous house we looked at.
Christie, that cottage was moved there. It was on the property somewhere. If I can remember, I was a kid when they moved it there. It was right near where the girls lived.
He moved the cottage?
Could it have been part of that Harbor View complex, do you think?
Could be.
Yeah. I remember cleaning it and jumping on the beds. So on to the Bailey's Harbor Yacht Club, formerly Schmidt's Gazebos. And we just thought this was a real interesting aerial view because you can see vestiges of the Winnegar fishing complex. You have the,
Right up in here.
and it's prior to all of the first version of the Bailey's Harbor Yacht Club condos, which sit, can you show them?
There. Oh, here, where they are now?
Yeah, there's the first building, right there.
Here? No.
I have a question.
Okay, here. Just a minute. Wait till I get the mic. Someone over there.
Go ahead.
First of all, I want to know what year this was. And secondly, you know what? It's got to be around 1976 or so. 78, somewhere in there. Well, the yacht club, the first condo out there was built around that time. Because I have the original plans for it.
Is that the Christiana there?
No, that's
No.
still part of the Schmidt's Gazebos.
No, that's what is now called the Bailey's Harbor condominiums.
Okay.
It was the two buildings out there that were the Bailey's Harbor Yacht Club, part of it. Those condos, yeah.
Those condos came after the yacht club was built.
Right, but I mean, you can see it out there. And I am trying to find out, you see the water to the left of that long break wall?
Yeah.
In front of that building right there, there is a riprap. I call it a riprap, a stone kind of area. You can't really see it because tall grasses have grown up between there and the Anclam Road. I'm trying to find out who put that in.
That was just a natural marsh when the
Yeah.
lake was high, 'cause I can remember when I was a kid, I'd go in that marsh and shoot carp with bow and arrow.
Right, there's rock that's been brought in all along there.
There was a natural bulrush marsh in there between Hickey Road and
Yeah.
where the con-
Okay, so no one knows where that rock came from or who put that in.
No, I think that was just natural.
That might have been from when
Get the
built down here.
So here it is from another view. And now you can see all of the old Winiger complex is pretty much gone.
Look at the sailboat.
An interesting fact on the area where the old Bailey's Harbor Yacht Club condos that are still there, before they were built, there was a helicopter pad there, or a space for one, and Ray Kroc would come up from Chicago in his helicopter and come down and then go to his boat. What was it called? I think it was called a Christie. No, it wasn't.
Ebony, wasn't it?
Bob Christie was his captain, but it was kept at the yacht club.
Wasn't it called the
It
Ebony?
might even be that one right off to the pier. No, not that one. Up by where the gas pumps were, right? Come further. Now go over to the other side, right there. That might have been it. That's where he parked it. He kept it parked.
Wasn't that called the Big Mac?
I think that it was a burger. It was a burger, but I don't know. I don't think it was called a Big Mac.
And he had a helipad there?
He had well, I don't know if they constructed it per se, but he landed there, and they went over with a golf cart and got him.
Yeah, because Ray Crockett, the last one that we had, he was a frequent visitor when the Harbor Fish Market was before, when Keno's owned, or when Lanny owned it. They used to come there a lot and visit.
Does anybody remember this, going into the yacht club? That's what started the fire, isn't it?
Yeah, that fireplace.
And that was the bar.
And there was the bar.
Now, wasn't there a famous Bailey's Harbor woman who used to play piano out there?
Yeah.
That was Lenore, that was Leanne's aunt.
Her name was Lois Brand, and she was married to my cousin Bill. And she had had an earlier career in music, and when she came up here, she wanted to do something, and so I encouraged her to apply out there and audition, and she played there for, I don't know how many years, but many years, and we sure had some good times singing along and all sorts of foolishness, I guess I could say. But yeah, and she's not from Bailey's Harbor. Her husband's father grew up here. Okay.
Hi, I'm Chris Shore. We sailed the Great Lakes for many, many years and lived in Michigan. And our first trip across the lake, we came with our sailboat and our 3 girls and the dog. And I swear that my mother and my aunts prayed us across because we didn't have any trouble. But our last stop before going home was always at the yacht club. And they had the most wonderful boaters lounge there. And here we were with 3 little girls. And the women's lounge had private little bathrooms with counters and hair dryers and all kinds of wonderful things. We'd lose them for hours. They'd be there in the bathrooms getting beautified. But of course, the parents always enjoyed coming in the evening because there was always a good time to be had at the yacht club. So we have many good memories of sailing into Bailey's Harbor. And one time, too, I have to tell you, we came over with another couple, and at that time, I don't know if you know, my aunts were the McCardle ladies, and they always came down to meet us on the dock, and we came around the end of the pier one time, and here on the dock were Jeanette and Katie, the 2 Father Tremblays, and the 2 nuns who were Tremblays, and they blessed us as we came in. They said, "We'll go any place you want with us, because you have quite a reception committee when you get here."
I want to talk about being able to go up the tower. I never did. So on to Toffs Point. This one was hard to find images of, so I just took advantage of Roy Luke's book about Toffs Point. But this was an ad that was in the Bailey's Harbor early 50s brochure. Here's a picture of one of the cottages that I believe still stands out there. The Friends of Toffs Point maintains these cottages. And this is an image of their harbor. I believe the little boy is Thorvald Toft, who had a law business in Sturgeon Bay for many years, and I think it said that the woman was a guest at the lodge at the time.
I interviewed his wife, his widow, several times this summer. Her name is Ruby. She, of course, was, help me, Leanne. Yes, yes. Her parents had the grocery store. And she has lots of stories to tell about Bailey's Harbor. She would be one that could certainly contribute to a book. She's 95 or 6 and just sharp as a tack. Lovely lady. Her daughter now has a law practice in Sturgeon Bay. Her son also was an attorney but died in his 20s of a heart ailment.
So this is a postcard that's part of the collection, and we're wondering, where was Rest Haven? Does anybody know? Rest Haven at Bailey's Harbor. Yeah. So now we're going to Kangaroo Lake, and this is the Birchwood Cottages. Again, this is an ad from a 1954 Door County Chamber of Commerce book. There's Mr. and Mrs. Valentine. They are the people who created Birchwood.
Is that statue from here or from someplace else?
This picture was given to us by Trudy Erickson, and I don't believe that's a local picture.
Got misplaced if it was.
No.
Look at the cars. Aren't they amazing?
Here's the same entrance.
Now, which cottages are we looking at? Where are they now in Kangaroo Lake?
They are just north of the Erickson farm, the Alan Erickson farm, just before you get to
Bernowski's, where Bernowski's live?
just,
These people right back here live in one.
Right.
oh, well.
Would they like to speak?
This is the west side of Kangaroo Lake, and we're on this is on the east side, this area.
Right.
That looks like the original road going down to where Esau's have their cottage. We have a piece of property that was bought in '75 off to the left of this road. There's 4 cottages on the property. I believe the people that bought it in '75 was a family called the Barbers. Now that bed was taken recently. We just cut down some large pine trees there. Yeah, you can see them laying on the ground there. We just cleared that out, and we're going to replant that in the spring. So that was taken this year.
Yep, that would be a now picture.
Yeah.
And that, I'm guessing, is an old shuffleboard.
There's a shuffleboard cart right between the 2 benches that are there. It hasn't been used in years, but it's still in good shape, and it's been there for as long as I know. And we've been coming up since the 70s. I'm not sure which bed this one is. That's probably over near Charlie and June's place. Oh, that's that's over where the Esau's, yeah, on the other side. We'd be off to the left on this one, I think.
There were 10 cottages.
This is the road going down.
Can you use the microphone, please, so we can hear you?
This is the road going down. We put in a new entrance to it some years ago, and the Hoffmans, who are alongside of us, also live down here. Bob Olson was one of the 4 fellows who bought cottages here, and when he died about 3 years ago, the cottage just behind this bed and to the right was the cottage that he was in. Up from them is the Hoffman's cottages, which they're right here. We're the 3rd cottage up, and then the 4th cottage is owned by the Botzos. Paul Olson now owns the one down by the lake, and he resides in Atlanta. Hoffmans are in Oshkosh. We're in Fort Myers, Florida, and the Botzos are down in Texas. And this is down by the lakefront, looking down on the property we're on.
Do you know anybody on this picture?
Was this resort originated with the Valentine family?
Yes.
Yes.
What was his first name? Lyndon Valentine.
My grandfather built those original Valentine cottages. And my dad had just started working with his father, and he passed away at a young age. My dad was like 17 years old. He had just started working with his father, and they were working on one of those Valentine cottages when his dad, my grandfather, passed away. And Mr. Valentine convinced my dad to finish the cottage on his own, and my dad said he didn't know very much. He was just starting out, but he did finish the cottage, and that's how he got to start pounding nails.
Look at the swimming suits here.
Wow. I hope they saved them.
What did you just say? Can you give him the microphone, Ev? I don't think people over here could hear him.
I'll just make a quick
Okay.
comment, and then I'll
Okay.
give it up. Pat Tischler was on the committee that was gathering information when I wrote the book on Kangaroo Lake, and he showed us scrapbooks. He had pictures of every building he had worked on, and he told the story about his father dying when he was senior in high school, I think. And it was a maiden school teacher that had to contract with his dad to build the house. And he said, but my father died. And she said, then I guess you're going to build my house.
Oh, good story.
So these are just more advertising pictures to try to attract people to.
Does anybody remember this?
Oh, they're on to something.
Did you ever go for a ride and have a chicken dinner?
The Kangaroo Queen is a specially constructed pontoon boat built to specifications of its owners, Ralph and Vesta Stromberg. It can carry 46 passengers seated in comfortable deck chairs. Did you? They look kind of shaky to me.
Yeah.
But enjoying the beautiful scenery with stereo music in the background. And those who wish can arrange for a picnic lunch of fried chicken. The cruise takes about 1 hour and is sure to be one of the highlights of your stay in Door County.
We have neighbors who said all people on our side of the lake would go down and watch when the boat came by. And she said, we just love to watch them dancing on the boat. And Vesta said, they never danced on our boat.
Vesta just passed away within the last month or two.
About
A
3
very
weeks
sweet-
ago.
Sweet lady, beautiful lady.
So this is the location on the west side of Kangaroo Lake where the boat used to take off from. And I believe that's the little ticket-taking booth right over here.
Here?
Green building Ralph
Yeah.
put up for bathrooms.
Yeah.
So moving on to Max Welton Braes.
Yep.
I think everybody's pretty familiar with this property, but we were able to find some really nice old postcards to give you an idea of how glamorous Bailey's Harbor was back then.
It's pretty amazing when you think of what an important building it was over the period of years, and sadly now it's not being utilized.
Do you know what year that was built?
Right here, she'll tell you.
It was, the first part of it was opened in 1928, and then the lodge was opened to the public in 1929. And the building that's now the clubhouse, or where the, down at the road, that, excuse me, that was built for guests that came up, and it was lodging for their chauffeurs, and it was also where they kept their cars, and they could have them serviced while they were there. Where you go in to pay your green fees now. Yeah.
Do you know who built that? Frank Holmes,
Frank Oldenburg, yep, Frank Oldenburg.
who was a builder here in town.
I had both my daughter's weddings there. And it was $8 a plate for ham and chicken, and 3 years later, it was $9 a plate for just one.
And today it would be $59.
So this is just kind of an interesting evolution of how they've modernized over the years. I thought this was interesting. This tiny little room has 3 ashtrays.
There, there. And the Wee-In. You talk about young people running things. My daughter ran the Wee-In one summer. I can't even imagine.
My mom and our aunts ran the Wee-In for a lot of years. They were the first people that were the waitresses there. But I don't know if everybody remembers, they had no cooking facilities there. People would order a sandwich and it would be made up at the lodge and then it would be brought down. But I can remember, and I think my cousins back here can too, they had the best cherry pie.
They did have cooking facilities in later years, because I remember padding out there, I was
Yep.
about 12. And when we'd make the turn there and go across the road, we'd always run inside Gladys Heel, was running the grill, and we'd grab a hamburger.
So on to East Shorewood. This was a brochure that Trudy Erickson let us borrow, and it was this beautiful 4-page piece. But I thought what was the most interesting is you could stay at East Shorewood for $17.50 for a week.
Rowboat, electricity.
I wonder what year
and
that
rent-free.
was.
It didn't have a date on it.
Okay.
So here's East Shorewood, which is farther south on the southeast side of Kangaroo Lake.
It's the last complex before you get into the swampy area as you're headed south.
Just before the dam.
Yes.
And it still is called East Shorewood, but I believe all these cottages are now individually owned also.
Anybody here from East Shorewood Cottages tonight? Okay.
Oh, there she is.
They are all individually owned now, and I manage for them. Owners block out when they're coming, and we rent them out the rest of the time. Very much still, the grounds is like the same as it was way back then, and they still have the sand
Still
beach.
$47.50 a week?
Nope. And they were built by Tischler.
We're working on Jumbo to have him put together a show for us.
Yes.
On the Tischler
That'd be
Builders.
nice. That'd be very nice.
So this was their launch area.
And not, well, many, many years ago, it happened to be a perfect winter because we had got very cold very quickly and there was no snow and the Kangaroo Lake was like glass. And on a Sunday afternoon, it just fell together. The whole community went out there. Everybody was skating. We had a huge bonfire and brought food. It was just an unbelievable day, and shortly thereafter it snowed and we never got back out there, but it was just perfect.
So here's East Shorewood today.
Not much different.
Nelson's Shopping Center. Wait till you see our 4th of July show. We've got some great Nelson
Oh.
Shopping Center floats for you.
We're also looking for any pictures, any memorabilia, because it's going to be one wampum show next year.
So here's Nelson's in 1987. No, it doesn't. This is a backside painting that Gary shared with us last summer when we did our history on him. And I lived at this complex too. I sleep around, that's right. And here it is today. I don't know if anybody remembers from our show, but this is the little house that's still there. The 2 little dormers that stick out were part of the very original little house that was there, and they've just added on over the years. And they still rent rooms today. This is from a 1967 Key to the Door ad, and I thought it was just really cute the way they had the Kangaroo Lake map. So we'll start with Jules Pinecrest Cottages. And this is another one we're trying to figure out, was that part of Eggers Point? According to their map, when you go back.
Sure, that was Eggers Point.
Okay.
Looking from the south to the north, the causeway would be up near the top of the, and that's pretty much the way it is today.
Is that where Michelson's cottages were?
On the other side of the causeway.
Oh, okay.
The point was on this, Eggers Point was on the south side.
So this is along here's where the causeway would be?
Yes.
All right,
Yep.
okay.
Fisher's Happy Landing, which is on the east side of the causeway.
There you go.
Unfortunately, we weren't able to find any old pictures, but that's what it looks like today.
It's on the left-hand side of the road if you're going west, just before, right on the water.
Interestingly, I work at the, in the visitor center, and there was a woman came by and was looking to see if that could be rented, because her and her husband and her 4 kids came up to Happy Landing for many, 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 many years, and then they went back to Chicago, and they hadn't been to Door County until this summer. And this was over 30 years. And she was looking to have a reunion with all of the kids. And she said there would be about 50 to 60 people if she could get some place that would take all of them. I told her, unfortunately, Happy Landing is not happy anymore. So I don't know where they ended up. But I thought that was interesting that they were, after all those years, they're coming back.
Kangaroo Lake Lodge.
That's where I recommend it, but.
A place like that with that many people at the resort.
This is part of the McCardle complex. And we were fortunate this spring, the McCardles did a show for us. So some of these images you may have already seen, but we thought we would show them again. This lodge burned down, if I'm correct.
No, it was torn.
Torn down? Okay.
The house on the left is.
Is this the shorefront?
That was one of the original cottages at the resort when my grandparents bought it. When our grandparents bought it, the lodge was in existence, this cottage, and there is a workshop down the way. Behind this, there had been another cottage that I believe burned down shortly before they purchased it, and they bought it from the bank. And then they added to this after that. I don't know if you have any of those later pictures, but yes, this cottage and one other cottage were cut in half. Their house downtown was cut in half and moved out to the resort when they built the house in town. And then my grandfather bought 2 more cottages from someone out in North Bay that had these cottages and moved them on. So they ended up with these 5 cottages. And then later, when you saw that original picture, the cottage to the north of that was purchased later. And that was added to the resort. They ended up with 6 cottages in the lodge. There were 11 housekeeping, or 11 sleeping rooms upstairs and 3 sleeping porches. And each of the sleeping rooms had a sink in them, but the bathrooms were on that 2nd floor on the piece extending out to the south there, or to the right. So here we are downtown, and what you're looking at is the building with the awning is the Yum Yum tree, and right next to it is what's called, at this point in time, the Cotton Club. Right now, the Florian 2 stands there.
And directly to your left was where Nick Greer.
Yep, we'll get to that one. So then the Cotton Club became Mr. C's. Well, that particular piece of property has a lot of history, but at this point, this is as far back as I could find pictures. This was Florian's first building, Florian Kotursky's first building, that then went on to become the Florida Club. I bet you didn't know that you could grow palm trees in Bailey's Harbor. Where there's a will, there's a way. And I bet there's a few people here who could tell some Florida stories. I know I wasn't allowed to interrupt my parents in the morning after they'd spent the night at the Florida Club. I was told to go watch some more cartoons. They were going to be sleeping for a while.
The night Florida burned to the ground, we were at Lauren and Annie's house. I still remember that.
Was that 1972 or 3?
Is that when that was?
I think so.
It was in the 70s, and I remember being there the night before.
You burned it down.
I did not burn it down, it was the night before. But I seem to vaguely remember that was one of the nights where they had a Harvey Wallbanger contest there. And I've heard that the prize was a T-shirt.
So this is a 4th of July image of the Florida Club complex.
I talked to Floyd and invited him tonight, but he's not been feeling good. And he's another one of our residents that we really need to interview and to tape because his health is not good. Notice the skunks? The interior kind of changed. The birch trees.
Well, and if you look, can you point to the back? You used to be able to pick your own steak and then Florian would cook it right in front of you, which was kind of a unique thing. Here's an article that was written about him that was in, I believe, a 1960s Door County Guide.
And for anybody who went there, Ada would get out her piano accordion and she would play. It was always a musical night when you were there.
Remember their motto used to be, "We're little stinkers." Do you remember that on all their advertising? Oh, sure, that's right.
So this was the hotel that they built, which right now is in the process, I think, of being probably torn down, and eventually there'll be a new complex there. This was the pool that they just took down this spring, and I remember as a child taking swimming lessons there, and there's proof that the Lions Club, I remember, sponsored it for the local kids. And, you know, who would think you could go swimming in winter?
Yeah, yeah.
In that little building, but we did. I don't think so. This is from a 1968, so I was still a little young, but. So back to Kangaroo Lake. This is going to be Kruger's, which would have been on what is now the Coyote Roadhouse.
Did you know where that restaurant originated?
I heard that.
State Park?
Yes.
Right up off of it, it was a tavern, they moved to Kangaroo Lake.
That's right.
From where?
From Peninsula
Yes.
State Park, on that middle road by the golf course, where T number 7 is today.
Huh.
It was on that road.
Was this a Tischler complex also? No.
But Krieger sold it to Michelson's,
Yep.
and it was a beer bar, which I'm sure some of us can remember.
Yeah.
18-year-old beer bar.
Yep.
That's where I met my wife.
So just as he said, it then became Michelson's Resort. How many seats were in that little bar, Jumbo? Do you remember?
It all depends what time of the night it was.
There were 8.
I remember that you could go into their house because as a kid, the kids would just go sit. What was her name?
Jody.
Blood.
Oh,
Blood.
Blood.
Kids, and if you wanted to use the women's bathroom, you had to go into their house.
In the living room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we'd go sit and watch TV in her living room while people sat in the bar.
Oh, yeah.
So there it is today. And here's the cottages today.
Those have all been sold.
Those have all been sold. Are they individual condos now too? On
Yes.
Coyote? That's what I thought.
And there's a Harbor Sands, or not, well, it is a Harbor Sands now, but it was the Sands Motel with Carol and Carl Jonas. It's pretty hard. Trying to read it off. I hear him read it off there. Telling Carol he was going to take a ride to Bailey's Harbor and go swimming in the clear blue waters and cool off in the breeze from the lake. Also to see how the cherry harvest was coming along and visit a friend. Carl said that was the Sands beginning. Driving to the north end of the town, his favorite swimming beaches
As a boy.
as a boy. Boy, am I having trouble reading it. Can you
He
read
more or
it?
less said, it just more or less says that Carol
Yeah.
Jonas went with him, and that's when they decided to buy the property where right across from the Sandpiper, that was the Sands Motel. Many of you remember that.
We've never figured out what that dinosaur was, though, have we?
No.
So now this is all gone, and there's a condo complex located there. And the
Anybody
house-
here from the condo complex? Anybody here from the condos there? No?
Can you point to the house? The house was moved across the street
Over there.
I think that'd be an interesting to show to try to figure
Yeah.
out where's the house.
My dad built the house, but the motel was built by Benny Olson.
Oh,
And then
that's
the
right.
two, you can see the motel, there's a space in between. In later years, Carly had my dad put an addition between the two motels.
Huh.
And then my dad also built that house, which is moved across the street, which Dennis now owns.
Look at how beautiful that sand beach is. There's no stuff growing on it.
Can't even see it now.
Yeah. Nice car.
57 pounds.
So there's the Sandpiper, doesn't really look that much different.
No. And that probably will be no more after this year.
Christie, getting back to that office at the Sands Motel. One 4th of July, Joe Parent had built a ungodly big goose or whatever you wanted to call it. Pardon?
Tell the story.
Yes.
Anyways, that night they took it off as lowboy transport and they set it on top of the roof of the
That's what it
Sandpiper office. Surprised Carly Jonas.
Well, we have a postcard of it,
Yeah.
and it was in our show last year, and we asked if anybody knows what's the story with the goofy goose on top of the thing. Now we know.
Now you know.
Well, we didn't know because it was such a weird looking thing. Okay.
Now we know the rest of the story.
Yes.
So, yes, we didn't know that.
Okay. So can you?
Bentley's was where the bookstore is now, and that's the best picture we could find.
Look at that.
Yes. And then it was Pile Inn. My Uncle Wally and his wife owned it. Nordell's owned it. Kenny Miller owned it. Ben Schrammel owned it.
Joseph Schleiss owned
Joe
it
Schleiss
before,
owned it.
right after Bentley.
Yep, right after Bentley. And I worked there that once, and they used to open at 6 in the morning. Lynn, remember your mom worked there?
Yes.
And they started serving breakfast at 6 in the morning, and as young girls, 18, 19 years old, we would go out, of course, and have to be to work at 6, and we knew that if we got in by 3, we'd get 3 hours, 2.5 hours sleep, we could go to work by 6. And the first one on it, there was always one girl on at 6, and it was usually me, so I would get it going, get everything done, and then Jane Reimer at the time would come in at 7.
Jane Pluff.
Jane
now.
Pluff now, she was Jane Reimer. And so then I would sit on the floor and sleep till 8, so she would watch it. It was quite an interesting place to work. Yes, we were at the Parkway the night before.
So there it is today.
Best custard you'd ever had. When Joe owned it, he didn't think the custard was rich enough, so he would buy whole cream and add to it to make sure that it was rich enough. It was almost yellow. It was so, oh man, it was good. No cholesterol, nobody cared.
So here we are, downtown Bailey's Harbor, looking north. Building number 3 is the Cape Cod, which I think Leanne maybe can speak to.
Well, I can't really speak to it. I think that's probably one of my pictures. But I just know that it was like a bar, and maybe, I don't think it was a restaurant, because Pat Tischler told me that my parents had the first actual restaurant in town. And I believe everything he ever said, so I believe that that is probably true. Because he remembered everything.
So where is this, Leanne?
This, well, see that building on the far right?
This one?
The far right.
Or this one?
That one. Okay, that was the Brand Brothers General Store. It's now Nelson's Hardware.
Okay.
And that little one that you're, the Cape Cod Inn is number 3. So that would be sort of like the corner of where the marina is now.
Okay.
But that burned down.
Are you looking north there or south?
Yes.
North.
So the Blacksmith Inn.
Because number 4 would be the Blacksmith Inn, and number 2 would be the Cornerstone. I'm pretty certain about that.
It's a funny angle on that picture because of the way it kind of goes around.
Well, they're not standing in the street. That whoever took the picture, I think, was standing, you know, off to the side.
The intersection must have been there at that time. You
It
know,
would be,
F-
yeah, it would be just past that
Right.
number 2 building.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's the Taste and Tattle. That was my mom and dad's restaurant. And somebody suggested it to them. I wish, you know, we could take credit for thinking it up. They built that first, and then later added on a service station, beer and liquor store, anything they could think of, you know, to turn some money in the summer, because back then the season was very, very short. You know, by Labor Day, there was no one around.
Can you remember the restaurant?
Oh, very well, yeah. That's funny. Well, I used to spend a lot of time down there. By how many months?
Okay.
No, I don't know. We don't go that way.
Somebody had
I don't
mentioned-
have any pictures of the ice houses that were back there.
Okay.
No. That became Clayton and Jean's, and then the Silver Gull Marina, and then eventually it was all torn down to put our community marina in. Yeah. And I know my mom told me that she used to, I think they were, we call them high falls men, you know, telephone men. I think they were installing lots of that infrastructure up in the county. And so she said she would like prepare a really good dinner-style lunch, and then they would come, and it would be, you know, like roast beef, mashed potatoes, you know, like a big meal for midday, that she would try and do that, and then they would come and eat there. And she had all kinds of stories about, they would stay open really, really late, because people then, when bars would close, you know, people would come to eat. And she always had stories about the Peninsula Players coming in and, you know, trying to piece together $1 so they could get a hamburger. And
You look to the left of the building, there's a little roof sticking up. That was an underground garage that Otto used. And just in front of that was an ice house. And my dad used to haul ice from Ellison Bay with a dump truck. And Otto Johns had a 39 Lincoln Zephyr. He parked out on the road. He bolted an extra rim on the right wheel of his car and a rope running around it. And he'd pull the ice blocks up to shoot into that ice house. And then in the summertime, we'd go down there and scrape the sawdust off the ice, get chip off ice. And he had quite a system going with that old Zephyr car.
I didn't know that. That was good to hear. That ice house was, in my growing up, it was there. Must have been pretty young, probably maybe even, yeah, I was under 10 certainly. But my friends and I it was like an attractive nuisance. And all we wanted to do was go play in that ice house because it was so spongy, you know, and everything. And we were forbidden, of course, to go in it because the dangers were, I mean, huge. If there was an air pocket or something like that, you know, a little kid could just go foomp right down and, you know, suffocate with probably very little time. But we made it, we lived.
I remember as a kid, too, my mom used to always say to us, now, don't go down by the ice house. No, we won't. And, of course, we'd come back, and she'd say, have you been down by the ice house? No, except we were all full of sawdust. We were too innocent to wipe the sawdust off. It was a great place, though. Oh.
So the Anklem Motel, which is on the south end of town, and that was part of that Elsie Anklum complex.
Wouldn't that be nice if the town could buy that and tear it down and have a beautiful water view? Or a historical building? That's-
Was this a Tischler?
Dad built that, I think it was like 57 or 58 for Elsie.
Huh.
She was a maid. She never married, and I think it was like 4 units. The building's still standing, I think.
Yes.
Well, here it is
Yeah,
today.
there it is.
Yep.
I don't know if anybody here knows anything about this complex. Can you give Roy the microphone?
Yes, where's Roy? Where's Roy? Right here.
Give it to Joe.
Well, that's, it's now Lock Haven on Chapel Lane, and Roy and I, our last name is Cole, but we're not related to Don and Alice Cole, who had the first buildings brought there in 1929, and they had 2 barns that came from the farm that Margie Orsted grew up on, a Zock farm west of Bailey's Harbor, and they brought 2 of those barns, dismantled them on the farm, hauled them down to Chapel Lane, and put them up as one-room cabins. They had no plumbing, no electricity. There was a 3rd building that the Coles had built on the property that housed a shower and toilet. So that was the beginnings of Lock Haven. That is one of the barns that was brought in 1929. Eventually, a porch was added to it, but it's pretty much in the same shape that it was originally. What was the porch is now a bathroom. The cottage you're looking at now is another structure that was brought to the property sometime after the Second World War. And that's that building now. All the buildings now, of course, have their own bathrooms and electricity and all that kind of thing. The main house, which is a few slides back, has had 9 additions since 1929. Many of them smaller log structures that were brought there, and where you see the stone part that was built between a couple of the log structures. My husband and I added the 2nd floor in 2007.
Well,
I worked with my father for Giffords, and we did some work. I was just a kid. We did some work in the main house, and then we also remodeled that little guest house that was there. And then Giffords sold it to Popper's.
I think you add.
I can't remember what we did, but I was just.
I think the Giffords added the bathrooms, the ceramic tile bathrooms in the house and in the cabins.
Yeah.
And they enclosed those porches to make hallways and bathrooms.
That was a long time ago.
Yes, it
I
was.
was just a kid.
well, it's 8:30, and we're, in all honesty, about halfway through this show. So I don't know if people want to keep going or if we should just pick this up next year where we left off. I certainly don't want to end something if people are having a good time, but.
What do you have left, Christy? What are the resorts you have left?
We have Gordon Lodge, The Rendezvous, Parent Motel, Motel Louise, Blue Ox, Ridges Motel, Otto Vakes, The Gulls, Myrtle Breckenfeld, Esserman's, Paul's Glass Bar, Hedwig Piles, Sunny Dawn, Gay Den.
And then ending pictures, couple of ending pictures, so.
I move that you have this as the first show of next year.
We concede.
Yes. That's a good idea, yeah.
I would like to thank everybody for all your input, because I think that's what makes these so much more interesting. I mean, to give you names and dates, that's all important, but I think what's really much more important is the lives that occurred in these buildings. Who was the mason? Who was the carpenter? Who was the person who lovingly cared for these and brought all the people that they've brought to Door County? So thank you for all of your input tonight, and thank you for the people who brought memorabilia And I think this would really make a great first book. If anybody wants to help on that endeavor, we would love to have more volunteers. Thank you for all the people who've donated pictures. And thank you for coming.
And keep it up.
I'll say something too. You know, we have Betty Anderson in the audience today, and I bet you your laundry did a lot of the laundry for many of these places. You bet. So Betty's history, she looks at these pictures, and I bet you can look and say, oh, yes, we did the laundry and the towels for many of these places. So nice to have you here tonight, Betty.
I just want to thank everybody for your attention. I especially want to thank Karen Tews and Chris Shorer, who there's a whole, like a scrapbook board over there on the McCardle's Lodge at Kangaroo Lake. And we just appreciate it so very much. If any of you didn't get our newsletter, if you don't yet belong, we have the spring newsletter just available for you to take it and enjoy it, and maybe it'll inspire you to join if you haven't already, ma'am.